Ladies and gentlemen, young people, friends across this nation and across the world, I want to speak to you today about something that's heavy on the hearts of many. How do we live in a world of criticism, hatred, anxiety, and rejection and not be crushed by it? How can we walk through this life, this broken, confusing, hurting life, and stand strong, unshaken, untouchable? You don't become untouchable by hiding, running, or building a fortress around your heart. You don't become untouchable by acting like you don't care. We live in a world that teaches us to harden ourselves, to disconnect emotionally, and to pretend like nothing gets to us. But the truth is, most of us are carrying wounds we don't talk about. We're carrying the scars of rejection, criticism, betrayal, and abandonment, and no amount of pretending makes those things disappear. Real strength doesn't come from acting invincible. Real strength comes from knowing who you are, and more importantly, whose you are. When you know your identity deep down in your soul, something changes. You stop trying to get validation from people who never really cared. You stop chasing approval from places that only drain you. You stop bending and breaking every time someone disapproves of you, misunderstands you, or lets you down. You become rooted, grounded, and unshakable, not because the world changed, but because you did. Because you're no longer building your life on shifting sand. You're standing on solid ground. Most of the time, we feel bothered or hurt by others because our identity is tied up in their opinions. When someone compliments us, we feel great. When they criticize us, we spiral. When they ignore us, we question our worth. We ride a roller coaster of emotions based on what others say, think, or do. But that's no way to live. That's not freedom. That's bondage to human approval. And it leaves us fragile, anxious, and easily shaken. But when you know who you are, when your identity is anchored in something unshakable, you become different. You walk into rooms with quiet confidence. You face criticism without falling apart. You get overlooked without losing your joy. You're no longer desperate for someone else to validate what God has already spoken over your life. You don't need every voice to agree with you when you've already heard the voice that matters most. Let me tell you this. You were created on purpose for a purpose. You were not an accident. You were not a mistake. You were not a random collection of cells trying to figure it all out. You were designed by a creator who loves you, who sees you, and who placed value on you that no one can take away. That's your true identity. Not what happened to you, not what they said about you, not the failures you've experienced. Who you are is not defined by the past. It's defined by the one who holds your future. When you live out of that identity, you no longer need to perform to be accepted. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You no longer bend just to fit in. You become steady. You become bold. You become peaceful. And that right there is how you become untouchable. Think about this. A tree with shallow roots can be blown over by a strong wind, but a tree with deep roots can stand through a storm. Life will bring storms. People will bring criticism. The winds will blow. But when you are rooted in truth, when your self-worth is not up for negotiation, you won't be moved. That doesn't mean you won't feel the pressure. Doesn't mean you won't get hurt, but it does mean you'll have the power to rise again and again without losing who you are. And the deeper your roots go, the less you'll be affected by surface-level noise. That's what makes a person untouchable. Not arrogance, not pride, not perfection, but quiet strength. The kind that's born in the secret place, the kind that grows when no one's watching, the kind that doesn't need applause to feel valuable. That's what real power looks like. And anyone can have it, but it starts with this decision: I will not let the world tell me who I am. I will remember who I already am. So when people mock you, you don't flinch. When they ignore you, you don't shrink. When they lie about you, you don't chase them down to fix their view. Why? Because your worth is not up for debate. Your peace is not theirs to take, and your calling is not in their hands. When you walk in this kind of clarity, you'll find that fewer things bother you, not because life is easier, but because you are stronger. Not because everyone treats you right, but because your sense of self no longer depends on them treating you right. You're anchored. You're grounded. And in that, you're free. This is how you begin to live a life where no one can truly bother you again. Not because the world got nicer, but because you became untouchable from the inside out. Criticism, rejection, judgment, these are all things we experience as we walk through life. Some of it comes from people we barely know. Some of it comes from the people closest to us. And if we're honest, it gets to us. Even when we try to brush it off, even when we say it doesn't matter, deep down it often still does. Why? Because so many of us are living with our identity hanging in the balance, waiting to be validated by someone else's approval. We let the words of others carry more weight than they should, and we end up building our self-worth on something fragile. What other people say about you can feel like a verdict. One comment can ruin your whole day. One rejection can spiral into self-doubt. One negative look, one passive-aggressive message, one rumor, and suddenly you're questioning everything about yourself. We give power to other people's words because we believe they define us. But here's the truth. They don't. What people say about you can never outweigh what is already true about you. Their opinions don't have the authority to determine your value. We live in a culture that makes it easy to tie our worth to performance and popularity. You post something online, and if it gets enough likes, you feel good. If it doesn't, you wonder what's wrong with you. Someone compliments you, and you stand taller. Someone criticizes you, and you shrink. It's exhausting living at the mercy of constant feedback, constantly being measured by people who often don't even know you. And in that cycle, we lose sight of who we are apart from public opinion. But you can't live your life for applause and expect peace. You can't be truly free while waiting for permission to believe in yourself. At some point, you have to decide that your identity is going to come from something unshakable, something that can't be taken away, something that doesn't rise and fall with trends, likes, moods, or the opinions of people who only see a fraction of your story. When you internalize that truth, something powerful happens. Criticism stops cutting so deep. Rejection doesn't derail you. The volume of the outside world begins to fade because you're finally tuned in to a deeper voice, one that reminds you of your unchanging worth. That's how people become untouchable. Not because they never hear negativity, but because they've trained their minds not to bow to it. It's important to understand that not all criticism is harmful. Sometimes feedback helps us grow, but even in those moments, we get to choose how we interpret it. Constructive feedback can be received without letting it define who we are. And toxic criticism can be rejected without needing to retaliate. When your identity is firm, you can respond to both with wisdom and grace instead of fear and insecurity. There's something incredibly liberating about no longer needing everyone to like you. It doesn't mean you become cold or dismissive. It means you stop allowing the opinions of others to control your emotional stability. You begin to realize that everyone sees life through their own lens. People will misjudge you, misunderstand you, and project their own issues onto you. That has more to do with them than it does with you. And when you see that clearly, their words stop sticking to your soul. Imagine living in such a way that you can hear criticism and stay calm. Imagine being overlooked and still feeling secure. Imagine being talked about and still walking with confidence. That's what it means to be untouchable. Not that people stop judging you, but that their judgments no longer define you. You live above it, not because you're better than others, but because you're no longer trying to be defined by them. When your identity comes from a deeper place, from your purpose, your values, your creator, you gain a different kind of strength, a strength that doesn't need defending, a strength that doesn't crumble under pressure, a strength that allows you to bless those who curse you and move on from those who try to diminish you. That strength makes you resilient. That strength makes you free. And the beautiful thing is that kind of freedom isn't reserved for the few. It's available to everyone who chooses to let go of the need for approval and embrace the truth that your value is not earned. It's inherited. You are already enough. You were created with worth that can't be added to by praise or taken away by insults. So the next time someone criticizes you, pause. Ask yourself, does this define me? The answer is no. Whether it's praise or rejection, encouragement or mockery, none of it gets to determine your identity unless you let it. And when you stop letting it, you become untouchable. Not because you're unreachable, but because you're rooted. You don't rise and fall with the tide of opinions. You stand firm, anchored in truth, unshaken by the noise. That's the kind of strength that can carry you through anything. That's the kind of peace that makes you unstoppable. And that, my friend, is what it means to be truly untouchable. The world is full of voices, some loud, some subtle, some encouraging, and some destructive. Every day, we're bombarded by opinions, judgments, and expectations. People will try to define you by your past, your appearance, your mistakes, your success, or even your silence. If you're not careful, you'll begin to believe that your worth is something that can be handed to you or taken away by another human being. But there's one truth that can silence all the noise. One truth that can lift the weight of performance off your shoulders. If God is for you, who can be against you? That's not just a verse in the Bible. That's a declaration of identity. It means that the creator of the universe, the one who shaped the stars and knows every hair on your head, is on your side. He's not watching from a distance. He's not waiting to condemn you. He's not setting traps to watch you fail. He is for you. He is with you. And when that truth becomes the foundation of your life, you become untouchable, not because trouble disappears, but because you know your security isn't found in other people. People may come and go. Their love might be conditional. Their loyalty might change. But God's favor over your life doesn't waver with public opinion. When God says you are loved, forgiven, chosen, and set apart, that's not up for debate. That's not dependent on your social status, your achievements, or whether or not you have it all together. That truth stands even when everything else feels shaky. You see, when you know God is for you, you stop living like a victim of other people's words. You stop being afraid of rejection. You stop bending yourself to fit other people's expectations. You stop trying to earn a seat at tables that were never meant for you in the first place, because you realize if God already approves of you, then no human disapproval can undo that. Think about this. The same God who stood with David in front of Goliath is the same God who stands with you when you're facing giants of your own, giants of insecurity, anxiety, fear, and rejection. The same God who gave Esther courage before a king, who gave Moses strength before Pharaoh, who gave Jesus peace in the face of the cross, that same God is with you. He's not distant. He's not indifferent. He's for you. And that truth has power. When you walk into a room knowing God is for you, you don't need everyone to clap for you. You don't need everyone to understand you. You don't even need to win every argument. You can walk with grace, confidence, and humility, because your confidence doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being loved by the one who never changes. Sometimes people will come against you simply because of how you carry yourself. Your peace will bother their chaos. Your joy will confuse their bitterness. Your clarity will disrupt their confusion, and their response might be to criticize, to belittle, to exclude you. But when you know God is for you, you don't have to retaliate. You don't have to fight every battle. You can rest knowing that no weapon formed against you will prosper, not because you're strong enough, but because the one who stands with you is. There's a kind of untouchable peace that comes from knowing the fight isn't always yours. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to exhaust yourself defending your name. God is your defender. God is your vindicator. And when he opens a door for you, no one can shut it. When he calls you blessed, no one else's curse can stick. You don't have to manipulate outcomes. You don't have to control people. You just have to walk in alignment with who he says you are. And let's be clear, this isn't about arrogance. This isn't about thinking you're better than others. It's about humility rooted in identity. It's about living from a place of rest, not striving. When you truly understand that God is for you, you don't become prideful. You become secure. You become generous with love. You become resilient in trials. You stop looking to others to fill a hole that only God was meant to fill. If God is for you, it doesn't mean you won't face adversity. It doesn't mean you won't feel pain. But it does mean the outcome is not determined by those who oppose you. Their opinion may be loud, but it is not final. Their rejection may sting, but it doesn't write your story. Their disapproval may slow you down, but it will not stop what God has planned for your life. This truth frees you. It frees you from people-pleasing. It frees you from perfectionism. It frees you from the fear of failure, because no matter what happens, you know the one who holds your life in his hands has already declared you worthy. So walk boldly, live freely, speak kindly, love deeply, not because the world affirms you, but because the one who made the world stands beside you. And if he is for you, then no one can be against you in a way that will ever define you again. Forgiveness is one of the most profound and transformative choices you can make in life. It's not easy. It doesn't come naturally. It's a choice that often feels like the hardest thing to do when you've been wronged or hurt. But it is precisely in the act of forgiveness that you unlock the door to freedom. Freedom that can make you untouchable by the pain and resentment that others may cause. We often think of forgiveness as something we do for others, something that lets them off the hook for their actions. But in reality, forgiveness is something we do for ourselves. Holding on to bitterness and anger only harms you. It doesn't change the other person. It doesn't punish them. It only chains you to the past, weighing you down emotionally and spiritually. The person who wronged you may not even know the toll their actions have taken on your heart. And even if they do, they may not care. But you are the one who has to live with the bitterness. You are the one who has to carry the anger. And that, my friend, is not the way to live a free and untouchable life. The truth is, forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of strength. It's easy to stay angry, easy to hold a grudge, easy to let resentment build. It's much harder to let go of the hurt, to release the desire for revenge, and to choose peace. But when you forgive, you take back control. You choose not to let someone else's actions dictate your emotional state. You refuse to let the pain they cause keep you locked in a prison of your own making. And in that choice, you become untouchable, not because the hurt never happened, but because you no longer allow it to have power over you. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing or forgetting the wrongdoing. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt or that it was okay. What it means is that you're no longer allowing the offense to define you. You're no longer holding on to the anger and bitterness that keep you tied to the past. Instead, you are choosing to release it, to free yourself from its grip. We'll all experience betrayal. People will disappoint us, hurt us, and sometimes even wound us deeply. But no matter what happens to us, we must remember this: the past doesn't have to control our present. You have the power to choose what you hold on to and what you let go of. You have the power to forgive. Forgiveness is also not the same as reconciliation. You don't have to reconcile with someone who has hurt you deeply, especially if their actions were toxic or abusive. Forgiveness doesn't always mean that you go back into relationship with the person who wronged you. Sometimes forgiveness is about letting go of the emotional burden and moving on with your life with peace in your heart, whether or not the other person changes. Reconciliation may come later, or it may never come at all. But forgiveness is the step that releases you from the need for the other person to change for you to find peace. Many people feel that forgiveness is an impossible task. They think, I can never forgive them for what they did. But the truth is, you don't forgive for the other person's benefit, you forgive for your own. When you forgive, you free yourself from the constant weight of anger and pain. You stop carrying the burden of their actions. You stop letting them control your emotional state. You stop letting them define how you feel about yourself and about the world. You take back your power. It's important to understand that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean that the wound no longer hurts. It doesn't mean that everything will be magically fixed. What it means is that you no longer allow that wound to control you. You no longer let it dictate how you interact with others, how you move forward, or how you see the world. Forgiveness is the first step toward healing. It's the way you begin to let go of the hurt and create space for peace to fill the void. Forgiveness also doesn't mean that the person who hurt you gets away with it. God sees everything. He knows what's been done to you. He knows the depth of the pain, and He will bring justice in His perfect timing. You don't need to hold on to anger in order to ensure that the other person pays for their wrongs. God is a just God, and He will take care of it. Forgiveness simply means you're choosing to let go of the need to control that outcome. You trust that God will handle it, and you trust that your peace and healing are more important than the desire for revenge or for the other person to pay for what they did. One of the most powerful things you can do is to forgive others the way you have been forgiven. We all have been given grace far beyond what we deserve. We've all made mistakes. We've all hurt others. We've all fallen short. And yet God has forgiven us. When we remember that, when we remember the grace we've received, it becomes easier to extend that same grace to others. Forgiveness doesn't come overnight. It's a process. Sometimes it's a daily choice. But as you forgive, you begin to free yourself from the weight of the past, and you open yourself up to healing. You allow peace to take root in your heart, and in doing so, you become untouchable, not because you've never been hurt, but because the hurt no longer has the power to control you. You become untouchable because you've chosen peace, chosen freedom, and chosen forgiveness. And in that, you become stronger, more resilient, and more at peace with who you are. Peace is not just a fleeting emotion or a temporary state of mind that comes and goes with the circumstances. True peace is a foundation, a way of life. It is a deeply rooted calmness that doesn't waver with the changing tides of life. It's the kind of peace that allows you to face challenges without being shaken. The kind of peace that remains unbroken, even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. And when you possess this kind of peace, you become untouchable, not because the storms don't come, but because you've learned to stand firm in the midst of them. We live in a world filled with noise, constant distractions, conflicting opinions, and an overwhelming flood of information. People are constantly striving for success, attention, validation, and control. In this whirlwind of activity and stress, peace seems like a rare and unattainable commodity. It feels like something that can only be found in moments of quiet or in the absence of problems. But true peace doesn't depend on perfect conditions. It's not about escaping difficulties or avoiding conflict. It's about having an internal stability that holds you steady no matter what's happening around you. Many people seek peace in external circumstances. Finding calm in a vacation, in a quiet moment, or in a place far from the noise of daily life. While these things can provide temporary relief, they don't create lasting peace. Lasting peace comes from within, from knowing who you are and knowing that you are enough. It comes from knowing that you are not defined by your circumstances, your failures, or even your successes. You are defined by something greater, your purpose, your values, and for those who believe, your relationship with God. When you know that your identity is rooted in something eternal and unchanging, you become anchored in a peace that cannot be disturbed. The key to peace is understanding that it doesn't come from controlling everything around you. In fact, peace often eludes those who try the hardest to control their lives. The more you try to manipulate outcomes to make everything go your way, the more stress you create for yourself. Peace comes from surrendering the need for control and accepting the flow of life as it comes. It's about letting go of the fear that drives us to constantly push, fix, and perfect everything around us. It's about trusting that things don't always have to be in your control to be okay. That, in fact, the more you release your grip, the more peace you'll experience. When you let go of the need to control everything, you also free yourself from the anxiety that often accompanies it. You stop worrying about what will happen tomorrow, next week, or next year. You stop living in constant anticipation of the worst-case scenario. You learn to trust that whatever comes your way, you will be able to handle it. This doesn't mean you stop planning or preparing for the future, but it means you stop allowing fear and anxiety to rob you of your peace in the present. The foundation of peace is built on trust. When you trust that everything is unfolding as it should, whether you understand it or not, you begin to experience a deeper level of peace. This trust comes from knowing that you are not alone in your journey. It comes from knowing that there is a greater plan for your life, one that is designed for your good, even if it doesn't always make sense in the moment. And this trust gives you the strength to face life's uncertainties without panic or fear. The world around us often associates peace with passivity or weakness. It might suggest that to be peaceful means to avoid confrontation, to let people walk all over you, or to be passive in the face of injustice. But true peace is not passive, it's active. It's the ability to remain calm, clear-headed, and strong in the face of chaos. It's the courage to act with integrity and love even when it's difficult. It's the strength to stand firm in your beliefs and values even when others try to shake them. True peace doesn't shrink from challenges. It faces them with grace and strength. In the same way, peace doesn't mean avoiding conflict or running away from problems. It means that you can walk into conflict, face the problem head on, and still maintain your inner calm. You don't have to get swept up in the emotional whirlwind that others might create. You can remain steady, centered, and grounded regardless of the chaos that surrounds you. That's the kind of peace that makes you untouchable, not because you avoid difficulty, but because you've learned how to stand strong in the midst of it. This peace isn't something you can force or fabricate. It's something you cultivate. It comes from consistent self-awareness, self-care, and self-compassion. It comes from knowing what brings you joy, what makes you feel centered, and what helps you stay grounded. And it comes from being kind to yourself when life doesn't go as planned. When you make peace with your imperfections, when you accept that things won't always go your way, when you stop judging yourself harshly for every mistake you make, that's when peace begins to take root. And the most powerful aspect of this peace is that it becomes a shield. When you have this peace, it becomes almost impossible for external pressures to disturb your inner calm. You stop reacting to every little provocation. You stop getting caught in every drama. You stop allowing other people's opinions, judgments, and actions to dictate how you feel. You are anchored in a deeper peace, one that doesn't move with the winds of change. This kind of peace doesn't just affect your emotional state, it affects your relationships, your decisions, and your action. When you are at peace, you make better decisions. You're not motivated by fear or impulse. You're not reacting out of insecurity or desperation. You are grounded in who you are, and that brings clarity. You're able to navigate life's challenges with wisdom, love, and grace, without being shaken by every obstacle that comes your way. As you cultivate peace in your life, you become untouchable, not because you are unaffected by life, but because you've learned to live with a deep inner peace that the world cannot shake. This peace allows you to face anything, whether it's a personal crisis, a difficult relationship, or external conflict, with a calmness and clarity that comes from knowing you are anchored in something unshakable. And in that peace, you become unstoppable. In life, we are constantly presented with choices. Choices that shape the way we experience the world and the way others experience us. Every decision, every action, every word has the potential to either uplift or bring us down. But there is one choice that stands above all others in its ability to create a life of resilience and peace: the choice to love. Love is not simply an emotion. It is an active choice. It is a commitment to see the good in others, to give without expecting in return, and to rise above the circumstances that might tempt us to respond with anger, bitterness, or revenge. In a world that often emphasizes self-interest, love challenges us to look beyond ourselves and to prioritize the well-being of others. It is a radical choice that requires courage, patience, and humility. But when we choose love, we unlock a power that makes us untouchable, not because we are immune to hurt or disappointment, but because love transforms the way we respond to the world around us. Choosing love means choosing to act with kindness, even when it's not easy. It means choosing compassion over judgment, understanding over assumption, and forgiveness over holding a grudge. It means choosing to offer grace even when we feel wrong. In this way, love is not about feeling good or being loved in return. It is about choosing to give even when we feel we have nothing left to give. It is about extending ourselves to others despite our own weaknesses and shortcomings. When we choose love, we stop being driven by the need for approval or validation. Love frees us from the need to prove ourselves to others, because we begin to understand that our value is not contingent on how others perceive us. Instead, we are motivated by the desire to uplift others, to make their lives better, to show them kindness in a world that can often feel harsh and unkind. We no longer need to be recognized or rewarded for our actions. The act of loving itself becomes enough. And here's the truth. When you make the choice to love, you become untouchable. Not because others won't hurt you, but because love disarms the hurt. Love is powerful enough to heal wounds, to bridge divides, and to break down walls. When you choose to love, even those who oppose you or hurt you can no longer hold power over you. Love transforms your response to conflict. Instead of retaliating in anger or bitterness, love prompts you to respond with patience, understanding, and grace. In this way, love becomes a shield. It protects your heart from being hardened by the negative actions of others. It prevents you from becoming cynical or jaded by the disappointments and challenges of life. And while it doesn't make you immune to pain, it helps you navigate pain without allowing it to define who you are. You learn not to take offense easily. You stop allowing the words or actions of others to dictate your emotional state. Love gives you the strength to rise above the negative forces that try to pull you down. But love is not just about how we interact with others. It is also about how we interact with ourselves. Often we are our own harshest critics, condemning ourselves for our mistakes, our failures, and our shortcomings. But to truly love others, we must first learn to love ourselves. Self-love is not about being perfect. It is about accepting ourselves as we are, with all our flaws and imperfections. It's about recognizing that we are worthy of love even when we fall short. When we choose to love ourselves, we stop seeking validation from external sources. We stop depending on others to make us feel worthy or valuable. We learn to stand firm in our own worth, grounded in the knowledge that we are loved by a Creator who sees us as we are and accepts us unconditionally. And when we love ourselves in this way, we become free to love others without expectation. We no longer give out of a sense of need or insecurity, but out of a genuine desire to see others thrive and grow. The beauty of love is that it is not limited by circumstances. It is not dependent on how we feel in a given moment. It is a constant choice, a decision to act with kindness, patience, and grace regardless of the situation. Love gives us the strength to keep going when life gets tough. It empowers us to keep showing up, to keep giving, to keep loving, even when it seems like our efforts are unappreciated or unnoticed. Love doesn't require a perfect response from others. It doesn't need to be reciprocated. It simply gives because it knows that love is the highest calling and the most powerful force in the world. When we choose love, we begin to shift the atmosphere around us. Love is contagious. It inspires others to act with kindness, to respond with grace, and to offer forgiveness. It creates an environment where people feel safe, valued, and understood. Love has the power to change not only our lives, but also the lives of those around us. It transforms relationships, heals wounds, and builds communities. But choosing love isn't always easy. It requires vulnerability. It requires putting ourselves out there, even when we're afraid of being hurt. It requires humility as we learn to set aside our own pride and selfishness in order to serve others. It requires patience as we work to overcome misunderstandings, conflicts, and differences. But it is precisely in these moments of challenge that love shines its brightest. Love doesn't grow in the absence of difficulties. It grows in the midst of them, transforming every obstacle into an opportunity to grow and connect. And as we continue to choose love, we become untouchable, not because we are immune to hurt or adversity, but because we have learned that love is stronger than hate, kindness is stronger than anger, and grace is stronger than judgment. We become untouchable not because we have mastered perfection, but because we have learned that love is a choice we make every day. And in that choice, we find the strength, the peace, and the resilience to face whatever comes our way, knowing that love will always be the greatest power in our lives.